negotiating for deals, not trying to just try to find somebody to talk to. Okay, you want the people that have already self-selected themselves to say, hey, yeah, I want to rent my house for 2-3 years and I want to sell it. Now it's just a matter of, okay, can we agree on price and terms? That's what's presenting and negotiating is all about. Can you come to an agreement on price and terms? Okay, so this is where you want to spend the majority of your time, and this is where you want to get better at this process. So I spent a lot of my time focused on the first phase of the OPH model, which is the attraction. Now that I have that like down pat, the majority of my energy now is going into fine-tuning my negotiating skills and my presenting skills. I'm constantly changing how I'm presenting the information to the homeowner. So we're going to go through some presenting and negotiating information here. And like I said, I never was a trained salesperson or a trained negotiator. Hopefully some of you have done sales training and negotiating skills, and you have that ability. You will crush this just by having those skill sets. If not, I'll give you a lot of great information here. Just in putting this together, there's so much stuff here that I forgot about. It's like, oh, I need to, after this weekend, I'm going to come back into this stuff and redo my video that the homeowners see, and actually redo how I present to them, just from what I relearned just going through this stuff that I forgot all about, because I was so focused on the attraction point. But now it's time to get serious about the presenting and negotiating. Okay, so the objective, obviously, you want to negotiate the rent and the purchase price of the home to be below fair market rent and below fair market value. Remember, you're trying to create that spread. If you remember from yesterday's example with Malik, we didn't negotiate with the homeowner that time. We just accepted, I think it was $1,900. That was fair market rent. And the fair market value of the condo was $250,000. We just accepted that. And that's what we were giving the homeowner. And we were still making over $30,000. But now, we got to get a little bit better. Let's negotiate on those two prices, on the rent and the purchase price. So let's see if we can turn that $30,000 deal into a $50,000 deal or more. Okay. So how do we do that? So we need the homeowners to really understand the reality of the situation to walk them through the process. Okay. So there's numbers that you need to know. The rent that you're thinking about paying the homeowner, and the purchase price of the home in 3 years. And also, if you remember the management fee that you're going to charge the homeowner, if and only if you buy the property, okay? Remember, that's what you say to the homeowners, we only get paid if we buy the property, so we charge $200 a month management fee, but we don't collect that if we don't sell the property. We have to, or buy the property. We have to buy the property in order to get our fee, okay? So that gives us incentive to make sure we got the right people in there that are going to follow through, that are going to be quality people, that are going to buy the property at the end. Or even if they don't, it's our incentive to go out and find somebody to actually buy this property by the end. So you want to make sure those three numbers are in your mind going into every negotiation. So obviously you're running through scenarios before you even have the meeting with the homeowner and to do the presentation negotiation. You probably would have run through every single scenario. Say, okay, if this is fair market rent, and if I can get it for this price, this much rent, and if this is fair market value, if I can get it for this much, how much am I going to make? And you're running through that spreadsheet, that scenario constantly, because you want to figure out, okay, what am I shooting for as far as rent point, and what am I shooting for as far as purchase price? And knowing that, I know I'm going to make like 50 grand or 60 grand. So you want to run through these scenarios before you even meet the homeowner, because you want to have these numbers in your mind to say, okay, this is my objective. Here's where we are, and here's where I want to be. So I need to get the homeowner from there to there. So how am I going to take them through the process so that they understand that even by giving me my price, or my rent value or my price, they're still going to make more money by working with me. I have to get them to understand how that actually works. Okay. So determining fair market value on the home. So obviously you need to work with a realtor to do in Canada. Unlike the US, so much information is accessible by online, like through Zillow and places like that. You can get sold prices, what property is actually sold for. In Canada, the only way that you can get access to the information of what property is actually sold for is you have to go through a realtor, because they're the only ones that have access to the information. They've made it private, and it's the only way that we can get comparables to find out what properties actually sell for. So in Canada, we work with a realtor, and that realtor will get us the information, say, okay, houses or condos or whatever, just like this one within the area, actually sold for these prices, and here's what they contained, here's the upgrades or whatever. And you do your adding and subtracting to figure out what you think the property is going to be worth. So to give you a really good idea of fair market value of the property, because that number you need to know in going into negotiation with the homeowner. Okay. So in your handout, there's this document, rent or rent to own with me comparison. So this is great in when you're doing a negotiation, and also educating the tenant, the homeowner, as to why they should work with you. So it gives you a lot of positives of rent to own with me. So, so the first one, rent payments, for example. You say, hey, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, you know that if you're just going to rent this out yourself, you know that there's no guarantee that the tenant's actually going to pay you, and it's such a hassle to go after and collect the rent when they actually don't pay. But when you're working with us, you know that my company guarantees the rent, and we pay it on time and in full every single month. So you don't have to worry about, are you going to get your rent paid, or are you going to have to chase the tenant down? How are you going to make your mortgage payment? By working with us, you're guaranteed to get that money every single month, regardless. All right, so it's just seeing a question popped up. So just let me go here. What fee to pay the realtor for comparable? Well, Florence, I used to not pay the realtor to do comparables, and what I ended up doing is because this is the majority of my business, right? I don't buy and sell properties primarily. I just do this strategy. So I would just end up going through realtors, and they get tired of doing it because it's only a one-way street. It was only a one-way street with me, right? I wasn't bringing them any business that they could actually make money. So now I've just decided I actually pay a realtor. She's the one that gave me the price, and it was the exact price that I had in my mind that I was willing to pay. She said, I pay her $50 for every comparable that she sends me. Now I actually don't do the comparable until actually the homeowner is to a point where they say, yeah, I want to take the next step. I see how this is going to work. It all looks good to me. I say, okay, well, the first thing we know is what is the true fair market value of the property. So going into my initial homeowner analysis, I won't actually do the comparable at that point in time. I just get the homeowner to tell me what they think their property is worth. Then, of course, I do my own looking up online and comparing it just with what I see. But I tell them when I do my analysis and say, hey, I haven't verified this information. This is stuff that you just gave me. Obviously, these numbers are all going to change once we know the true fair market value of the property. And we're only going to know that by either getting a home appraisal or getting a comparative market analysis from a realtor. That's the only way we're going to know the true fair market value of the property. Just because you say it's worth this doesn't mean that it's actually worth that. We have to get an expert's opinion. But I still do the homeowner analysis. Just show them, because it doesn't matter what numbers we use. I'm just comparing, what they would get if they rented and sold it in the future themselves, or working with me. But I'm using the same number in both comparisons. So it's still going to show that they're going to make more money with me. But once we move to the next level, I say, hey, okay, yeah, I see John, and it looks good, and I think we want to go to the next step. Say, okay, the next step is we need to actually determine fair market value, because we got to base the contracts and the information on fair market value, so I can give you an assessment as to, so the numbers I put in the contract are more valid, because obviously we need to know that. So but yeah, to answer your question, I pay my realtor $50 for every comparable, but I don't do a comparable until I've actually had an analysis with the homeowner and they want to actually move forward. Okay. So back to the comparison here, quality of tenants. So this is just information that you can use in your discussion with the homeowner to try to move the needle more in your favor. Say, hey, you're just renting out yourself. You have to screen the tenants yourself, and it's very time consuming, such a hassle. And you don't, if you're not doing this on a regular basis, you may not know the red flags to look for, or very specific things. But we screen our tenants and we take full responsibility of their issues. So if they damage the property, our company is fully responsible. But the quality of people that we put into these homes, they come into this arrangement with a large sum of money up front, and they're intent on buying this home at the end of the term. So the chances of them doing a lot of damage are very slim, because they know that if they don't buy this home, they have to walk away without their money. And then we have the money that if they do some damage, we'll be able to cover the costs and get it fixed up and back into the same condition that it was when we received it, less normal wear and tear. Long-term lease. Tenant, you're Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. These tenants can move out at any time without notice, regardless of what the lease term is. But when you're working with us, we've got that guaranteed term of 3 years. So there's no worry. It doesn't matter if our tenants, if the people that we're dealing with move out or not. Our company still has that guaranteed term. We're going to find somebody else to move in there, and you're not even, there's no disruption to you whatsoever. Repairs and maintenance. So, Mr. and Ms. Homeowner, you know that, you're responsible for the costs, which is typically on a single family home, anywhere from $2,000 to $2,500 a year to upkeep this home. Some from furnace cleanings to just exterior stuff to, calling in trades that need to get things fixed. Tenants, they don't treat the home like you treat it, and they're a little bit rougher on it. So things need repair. So, you're going to be responsible for that money. But guess what? You work with us, and all those things, under $1,000 per instance, we're taking care of all that stuff. So you're not going to be out of pocket any of that, $2,000, $2,500. You're not going to be out of pocket any of that money, because we're going to take care of that for you, because we're looking after all the repairs and maintenance up to $1,000 per issue on everything of one. Brian says on the handouts on these pages are cut off and they don't show the full. If you understand what I'm saying, I do not, but so I don't want you to not see what's going on here. So just give me a second. So this is the one you received. Oh, I see what you're saying. It's not, you're not seeing the full right side. Okay, I will, thank you very much for that. I will, I'll send you a new copy of that after the course. I'll get that fixed. Thanks for that, by the way. Yeah, I'll get that. I'll send you the revised copy, so obviously you'll be able to see that. Sorry about that. we'll get back. We'll get back to our document here. All right, where was I? Oh, we did the repairs and maintenance. Tenant causes a lot of damage. So, Mr. and Ms. Homeowner, you're renting this place out yourself. You're responsible for those huge repair costs. It's likely going to, likely a cost of eviction to get that terrible tenant out, and there's no rent money coming in. And sometimes it's going to take 2, 3, 4, 6 months to get those people out. Meanwhile, they're doing damage to your home. But with us, we take care of everything for you. There's no cost or effort on your part. They're our tenant, and we're the ones that are ultimately responsible, and we're going to continue to pay you whether the place is vacant or not. Okay. So that's why, if you're turning these into a rent to own, even if you're doing short-term rentals and stuff like that, you're ultimately responsible for the property. So you want to make sure that you're doing your very best to screen these individuals. Like I said, with me with the rent to own, the very first hurdle is them paying that $500 to meet with the credit coach. If they don't pass that test, they don't even get in. They pass that, and obviously we're doing the full checks. You've got the credit checks. I'm checking all of the references. I'm calling their employer. I'm calling the ex-landlords. I'm, running them down on social media. I'm looking at trying to find them on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff, just to find out as much as I can about these individuals, to see what type of lifestyle they lead. People expose themselves on social media a lot, so it's easy to figure out, are these people constantly partying all the time, or they lead a pretty average, boring life, things like that. Okay. Number 6, property is deteriorating. Many may require a lot of renovations to bring it back to acceptable standards. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner that are going to rent it out yourself, you're responsible for renovating all of your hard-earned for renovation, and all your hard-earned profits could go back into fixing up this unit. When you work with us, we can work with you and substantially reduce or eliminate completely any additional renovation costs. Obviously, with us, that's reflected in the price, right? If we're going to get it, obviously want to get it at a cheaper price, because we know that we're going to have to put the money into it, but they're not going to have to put the money into it. Like I mentioned yesterday, I was contacted by one of the people in my database. When I emailed them out, they come back and said, yeah, we need to sell our house, but it needs repairs and we can't afford to do it. So it's like, well, okay, well, send me your phone number so I'll call you. But you'll get homeowners like that too, that there's disrepair and they can't sell it. So they come to you. Obviously, you're going to get it at a better price, but you're going to have to sink some money into it up front. Okay. Number 7, management. Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner that are going to rent it out yourself, you will be responsible, and will have to deal with all the unexpected phone calls at the middle of the night. You're going to have to drive over there for the stupidest things, because it always happens. Collecting their rent, dealing with them if they're late on their rent, filling the unit, and all the repairs. But, and you work with us, we take care of all these aspects of management with no worries or effort on your part. You just get to sit back, kick back, lay on a beach, and collect your check. You don't have to worry about a thing, because we're going to do it all for you. Time. Mr. and Ms. Homeowner that's renting the place out yourself, you're going to spend countless hours looking after your asset and dealing with the tenants. But, when you deal with us, we allow you to enjoy hands-off ownership, and actually allows you to profit more than you would if you just did this yourself. So, we'll take all the give you all your time back, and we'll take on the responsibility of dealing with this and the property and the tenant, looking after everything on your behalf. Out of town or long distance owners, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, it's hard to respond to those tenant issues when you don't live near the property. If you have to drive an hour away every single time just for a plugged toilet, it gets very old very fast, and it's very inconvenient and time consuming, especially at late at night or in the dead of winter. Obviously winter is a factor for us here in Edmonton. But when you're dealing with us, we take care of all those aspects of management. No worries or effort on your part. So you just get to stay home in your nice, cozy home, and you don't have to deal with anything because we're the ones out there dealing with it for you. Vacancy. You're responsible for all the ongoing costs of the home, even though there's no income coming in. So you're going to have to deal with it when it's vacant. Paying for the mortgage, the taxes, insurance, plus all the utilities, making sure that the snow gets shoveled or the grass gets cut if that's appropriate for the property. But when you work with us, your home will never be vacant because even if there's nobody in there, we're still paying you regardless. And so there's no worries on your part. And the second last one, pre-foreclosure. Mr. and Ms. Homeowner, you're in danger of losing this home and all of your hard-earned equity and having your credit bruised if you let this thing go into foreclosure. And the only way to stop the foreclosure is to actually pay out all of the arrears right now, get them caught up, not making payments, but get the whole thing caught up right now, and then moving forward with continuous payments on the mortgage. So obviously, you're going to do it yourself. You got to find the money to do all of it right now. Otherwise, we can stop the foreclosure right away, save a good portion of your equity and protect your credit rating. But we'd have to move you into another place. Number 12, hard time selling. Hey, Mr. and Ms. Homeowner, you're stuck with all the carrying costs, getting this place show ready. We know from experience from the time the tenant moves out to the time that you actually have it sold and have that check in your hand from the lawyer, it's typically going to take at least 5 months. There's time needed that you're going to have to do fix-ups because, hey, let's face it, 3 years of having people live in there that aren't you, there's going to be some needed repairs and maintenance to get it show ready. You're going to have to paint the entire place, maybe change out some fixtures, maybe there's some carpets that need to be replaced. You're going to have to do all of that, then put it on the market. Meanwhile, it's sitting vacant the whole time, the realtor's showing it, and then hopefully you can get somebody within 60 days to get an accepted offer, and then typically 45-60 days later you close on this deal. Meanwhile, you're paying the mortgage, the taxes, insurance, all of the fix-up repair costs, plus all the utilities. And then plus you have to pay the realtor their commission. So all of that put together, that's going to be a lot of money. And then if you're selling it before the term is over, there's going to be huge payout penalties as well. So that's going to dig in, take a lot of your equity away. But if you're working with us, we can stop all that negative cash flow right away, and you're going to make more money than you would if you just sold it yourself, because our buyer is going to be built right in. There's not going to be any vacancies. You're not going to need to fix it up before it's sold, any of that stuff. So and there's not going to be a realtor taking commission. So all of those expenses actually go away, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. And that's why you're going to make more money working with us than you would if you just did it yourself. Ali says, how can we stop a foreclosure? So Ali, it's the only way to stop it in Canada is before the bank takes title. So in Canada, it goes through a legal process. It is started in the court usually about 3 months after they have not paid mortgage. The lawyers for the bank file what's called a statement of claim, and that starts the foreclosure process. Legally, in many of the provinces, some provinces are different. It's a power of sale, but you're given a time frame. Usually, when that document is filed, you're usually given a time frame. There's be a court date, and then you'll be given a redemption period. And if you do not have it fixed by the end of that redemption period, then the bank will take title. So the owner can still act and do something with the home prior to the bank actually taking over the title of the home. But once the bank takes over the title of the homeowner can no longer fix the problem. So as long as the home is in the homeowner's name, the homeowner can fix the problem. And the only way to fix the problem is you have to pay out all the arrears and that will stop the foreclosure. So what I've done is I had my lawyer contact the bank's lawyer and say, hey, we're going to pay out all the arrears right now on the stipulation that you will stop the procedure and you'll stop the foreclosure procedure right away, provided once you receive the funds, they get the mortgage caught up to date. The other lawyer agrees. My lawyer sends them all the money that they requested, and that then puts the mortgage in good standing. And then it's just back to paying the mortgage as usual. But I do not do any of that stuff until the homeowner has signed a lease option with me and giving me full control, and they've actually moved out of the property. But that's how you'd stop a foreclosure here. What costs are included in management fees? Give sampling of costs. If you're talking about the management fees that I charge the homeowner, remember that's the $200 a month I charge the homeowner if and only if we purchase the home. So that's what we would collect from the homeowner with respect to management fees. If you're talking about management fees from like a property manager, they have a lot of fees. They take 10% of the rent right off the top. They have fees for screening tenants. They charge fees for showing the property. They charge fees for filling the property. But if you're talking the fees on my behalf when I deal with the homeowner, the fees that I take are come off only when the property is purchased. So I collect up to $500. When did I say that, Florence? I think I'm lost in what you're asking me. I collect up to $500. Oh, sorry. I know what you're talking about now. So the $500 I was talking about, that is when I put somebody into the property to rent to own it. So if a person comes in and say, hey, John, I want to buy a home, but the bank says no, so I need to do a rent to own. Great. Okay. First step, give me $500, fill out this application. That $500 I'm going to pay the credit coach to work with you. That's the $500. I charge the person that wants to get into the tenant buyer. Don't confuse that with the homeowner, with me dealing with the homeowner whatsoever. So there is no, that's the only fee that I would charge the tenant buyer to get into the process. The management fees that I charge the homeowner, that is basically how we collect our money. That's how we show the homeowner that we get paid, is we charge them a fee, typically $200, or it can be whatever you decide it to be, typically $200 a month for every single month, but we only collect it upon the sale of the home. Ali wants to know, where does the money come from to bring delinquent payments current? Well, Ali, it typically comes from, if you're the investor, it typically comes from you. So you make the decision whether you're willing to put in the money for this to be a deal. So you have to do your analysis and say, hey, is it worth me putting the money up front to stop the foreclosure for this property? Does it make sense? And so you have to run the numbers on, what's left owing on the mortgage. What's the mortgage pay down going to be? How much are you going to, what kind of deal are you going to negotiate with the homeowner? And then run it through your rent own spreadsheet to determine, okay, if I put in $15,000 right now, does it still make sense? Is my ROI high enough to do the rent to own on the property? Am I going to make enough money? Okay, if I put $15,000 in right now, I do know that when I get a tenant buyer, they're going to give me $10,000 right up front. So now my costs go down to, I'm only $5,000 invested in the property. Okay, am I willing to be at that point? How long is it going to take for me to get my $5,000 out? Well, if I get $500 cash flow every single month, it's going to take me a total of 10 months before I'm fully paid back my 15 grand. Then how much then how much, am I going to make on the rest of the deal? Does it make sense? So you just have to run the numbers, Ali, run the analysis, very much like the fix and flip yesterday, but instead of fixing it up, we had to put $79,000 into it or something, 76,000. You're basically figuring out where you're putting whatever the delinquent, whatever it costs you to get it current, and the holding costs. If it's going to take you 2 or 3 months to get it filled, put a tenant buyer in there. If you have to fix it up, do any of that stuff, you just have to make the decision. If I'm going to put this money into the property, how soon can I get it back out, and what's my return on investment going to be? So you have to do the analysis. Get back to Florence. You had said covering vacancies, repairs, maintenance. Okay, Florence. So in this situation, I understand what you're talking about now. So you're saying if the homeowner's working with me and I'm going to cover vacancies, I'm going to cover, if there's going to be repairs or whatever. So when I have a tenant buyer moving in there, the tenant buyer is actually responsible for all the repairs up to $1,000. So while the tenant is in there, they're the ones paying for the repairs, not me. So it's only if I have to get the tenant out, evict them, and it sits vacant while I'm trying to find somebody else to move in. So where does the money come from? Remember, the tenant paid at least 4 months worth of rent up front. They give a down payment. In yesterday's scenario, the down payment when I was running through with Malik was $9,000, which was at least 4 months worth of rent. Plus they paid a security deposit, or whatever you call it in your province or state, security deposit, or first or last month's rent, or whatever you want to call it. They paid that as well on top of that. And you've been making cash flow on that property for as long as they've been in there. So you should have enough money built up, saved up, if you didn't spend it all, to cover at least 5 or 6 months worth of vacancies. And if you had to actually do any repairs, you would have money in there. And not only that, but if you're running multiple, like when I had, 24 of these properties going all at once, and if you get one bad one that sits vacant, I mean, it was no big deal because you had enough cash flow every single month to cover the one or two that you had to cover the costs of. If you only have one going and it's not that great, the person that you put in there is not that great, then you have to, the money you get up front and all of the money you're making on cash flow, you just want to keep that in your bank and just save it for the rainy day in case the rainy day does come. But you have the money. The tenant buyer should have given you at least the 4 months worth of rent up front, plus the security deposit, and plus the cash flow that you're making on every single month. You have all of that money to cover the situation should they have to leave the property or become vacant, or they do damage and they move out. But in most situations, the level of tenants that go into these rent to own is extremely high, and the chances of damage is so extremely low. And people they do lose their jobs, they do get divorced, and they stop paying. But when I deal with them, they know that they have to go. They can't stay in there. They know that. They may, stay for 1 or 2 months while they're figuring things out, but they know they got to get out of the place. So there's never a hassle getting people out. I just may have to cover a month or two, and then they get out, and then I have cleaners coming in and clean the place, and I put somebody else in there. And so, yeah, it may take 4 months or so, but I've collected enough money from them at that point to cover all of these issues, provided you're not spending every single cent that you make when it comes in, and you're saving for these. When you're running this business, you need to be prepared and saving for these situations. But for the most part, if you're screening the tenant buyers well enough, this becomes less of an issue. Okay. So that's where the money comes from for dealing with this stuff. But when the tenant buyer is in there, they're the ones that's actually responsible for all the repairs and maintenance on the property. Do I pay myself a salary? Yeah. So when I was first doing this, I was living off the money people were paying me. So I had to balance both, Florence. I had to balance making sure I had money to live, to pay my bills. Plus, I had to make sure I had money coming in case of these situations. But like I said, at the very beginning, I was not very good at screening people. I would just, and if you had money, you were in there. I didn't care. I just let people in because they were willing to pay me $5,000 or $7,500 up front, and those were the ones that I had the issues with. But like I said, I made that balance. I had no job, remember, so I made the balance of, okay, how much can I spend versus how much do I need to keep, and as long as I was kept bringing in a deal a month and getting that injection of cash every single month of $5,000 or $7,500 every single month, it was less of an issue. Plus, my cash flow was growing every month by $300 to $500 more. It became less and less of an issue. But like I said, if you're just getting started and you've only got one, and you're only doing like one every 6 months or something, and you're trying to live off of it, plus keep the money aside for situations, and it can be tough. I'm not going to tell anybody what a reasonable salary is. That's completely up to you. It's how you determine. It's whatever you think. Whatever you think. However much money you want. Because what's reasonable for one person is unreasonable to another. It all depends on your standard of living. For me, and my, like, I've got to the point now where I live off the least amount of money possible. I don't believe in, I have no desire for worldly possessions, any of that stuff, fancy cars or watches or houses or any of that stuff. I no desire for anything. Like, I'm still driving the same. I bought a 2008 limited Taurus Limited, high-end sedan back in 2008 and bought it new. Still driving that thing today. I don't care. It still works perfect. So why would I even bother giving it up? I have no desire to have a fancy car or a home. So what's reasonable for me may be unrealistic for others. Yeah. So you get to a point where that bank account keeps raising, Florence, and then you make the decision, okay, there's a lot of money in there. What am I going to do? For me, I invested in myself, my education, more than I invested in properties. But yes, in my model, once I get to it, I turn around. My new model now is actually using the money and being a private lender, hard money lender. Or once it gets up to a point, using that to purchase other investments. So I'm going to get back to the going through the training here. I'll answer more questions in a little bit. All right. So that was that sheet. This is just a sheet for renting versus rent to own. So remember we talked about that, I don't remember if you remember me saying that the average single family home, so we're talking about a single family home, it costs about $2,000, $2,500 a year for the upkeep. Well, the homeowner goes, no, I haven't paid any, I haven't had to spend any money on my house the last 3 years or whatever. And then you have to, you can break out this worksheet to actually go through it with them. I was like, okay, Mr. and Ms. Homeowner, when's the last time you painted the property? Obviously you're going to have an idea just by looking at the place, but how much did it cost to paint the place? $3,000, $4,000? Yeah, about that. So when's the last time you had it done? 3 years ago. So how often do you think you'd do it? Like every 3 years or every 5 years? Every 5 years. Okay, well, if you spent $4,000 and you do it every 5 years, then on average, that's $800 a year to be allocated towards painting. So we'll put in here $800 a year. And then same thing with flooring. How often do you replace those carpets? Every 8 years or so. What's that cost you? $4,000 or so. Okay, well, that's about $500. That works out to be about $500 a year. So we'll put that in there, and you just go down through the list. So even though they say they not may not have spent the money. You just have to go through this and say, okay, well, when's the last time it was painted? How much did it cost you? How often do you paint the place? Or the flooring, how often you change out the carpet, stuff like that. Well, you're getting your furnace cleaned every year, aren't you? Because, most good homeowners, they get their furnace cleaned at least once a year, if not, twice. So what's that cost? That's what that run you, about $250, $300. Exterior maintenance, you do it, clean your gutters, lawn maintenance, have people come in to, spray the weeds, stuff like that. You do it yourself. Okay, you do it yourself. How much time you spend? What's your time worth? You never know, unless you go, oh, I don't, I just do it myself. It doesn't cost me anything. Okay, great. Well, we got to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges here. So obviously, if I'm going to be taking over your home, it's going to be me doing it, not you. So what's your time worth? Because maybe I'll think about hiring you. So he's not going to say his time's worth nothing. If you're saying, well, maybe I'll get you to do it. So he's going to come back with a figure, right? To say, okay, well, yeah, my time's worth something, obviously. So, how much would you charge? Because maybe I'll just get you to do it instead of the guy I normally get to do it if you're cheaper. So you can use this to sort of justify the number or come up with the number for how much they'd actually spend on repairs in a given year. And this, whoops, I gotta go back. The spreadsheet on or the sheet on the right is if you're comparing renting versus rent-own. So in renting, how much income are you getting per year? Yeah, you take your rent and multiply it by 12. And then you got to subtract for vacancy. So what's typical vacancy? So you want it to be, at least 1 month, if not 1.5 months a year vacant, because a really good renter will stay, say, about 2 years, and then once that renter leaves, if you're most really good landlords, as soon as a person leaves, they repaint the entire place and they do all minor fixes, and then it takes a little bit of time to do that. They'll maybe do that, take them a couple of weeks, and they put it up or a month, and then they put it up for rent. And most really good tenants aren't just sitting there looking to move in that day. So typically they need to, might take you a month or so to find a really good tenant to applies, and then they have to give obviously a month's notice. So after 2 years of having a tenant in there, it may take up to 3 months to get another really good tenant in there. So that averages out to 1.5 months a year that it's vacant on average. So I typically won't accept anything less than a year. If a homeowner thinks, or anything less than a month, a year, the homeowner thinks that they're just going to, as soon as one tenant leaves, they're going to put in a tenant like the same day or the next day. Very unrealistic. Then they don't care about their property, because they should be at least getting cleaning crews in there, cleaning the furnace, getting it repainted to get that high quality of tenant in there. If they're just moving people in, then they're just not caring for the property. It's going to show wear and tear. So you just go down through this process to show at the end of the day how much more they're going to make on a rent-own, because they still have to pay their taxes. They're still going to, even though you're paying them less in rent. So if rent was $2,000, that's the gross rent would be $24,000 for renting. But then you take off the vacancy. Let's say it's one month vacancy. Now they're down to $22,000. So on the left side, the annual effective gross income on the top would be $22,000. So let's say you're only going to pay the homeowner $1,800 a month, not $2,000, because you figure that you should get it cheaper. So that would be $21,600. So they're making like $400 more in rent. But you're going to give them $21,600. Actually, I want to drop down to $1,700. That's $1,800 is too much. So that's $20,400. So if they're getting $2,000 plus a month or minus a month vacancy, that's $22,000 On the renting side, I'm going to pay them $1,700 a month. That's $20,400 on the rent-to-own side. They still have to pay. The taxes have to come off that. Their house insurance has to come off. Obviously, the repairs and capital improvements, that's the $2,000 and $2,500 we talked about. But with us, that's going to be zero. Electricity, hydro, that 1 month that it's going to be vacant, they have to pay for it. So that could be, say $100 a month there. On our side, it's going to be zero because we're paying it if it's vacant. The gas and heat, whatever, $100 there. They'd have to pay for the 1 month of vacancy. Ours would be zero. Water, sewage, they'd have to pay for the month, so $50 or whatever. Ours would be zero. Lawn and snow removal, somebody's got to do it. Throw in $50 there when it's vacant. Ours would be zero because we'd be dealing with it. Zero for cable and phone for both. Management, obviously, should be putting something in there because their time has value. So there would be something in there for them. Ours would be zero. Advertising, well, it's going to be vacant once a year, so put in $100 for advertising. Ours would be zero because it's not vacant. Pest control, you're budgeting for bed bugs and stuff like that. You can put in $140 there for them. Ours, we take care of it. Trash removal, don't need. Bad debts, less eviction costs. So once you go through that and you tally it all up, there's a chance that us paying them $1,700 a month, their net annual income is going to be higher than if they rented it out for $2,000 a month themselves, and factoring in the vacancies and factoring in the other stuff. So that's what you do, is you want to go through this and figure out, okay, if fair market rent is $2,000 and I run through the spreadsheet, how low can I get my rent to show that it's going to be more than what they're getting? So you would run through this scenario before you even meet the homeowner, just to practice it. Like, say, okay, just so you know these numbers in your mind. Okay, 2,000, there's going to be at least a month's vacancy. I know that. They're going to have to pay these things when it's vacant. The capital improvements, I got to make sure, I need to make sure I'm getting a good number in there. So if I have to go to the repair worksheet on the left and justify the $2,000 or whatever it is, I can do that, because you need to get that net annual income number down as low as possible on the renting side, because on the rent-to-own side, pretty much all the numbers are going to be zero except the taxes and the house insurance. They have to pay those, but all the other numbers will be zero on your side. So they'll make considerable more money, even though you're paying them less rent. But you need them to visually see this, to see, okay, well, oh yeah, I have these expenses, because all they think of is, well, they're going to make $2,000 a month, and it's going to be 12 months, and they're going to make $24,000. You pay me $1,700 a month for 12 months, that's only like $20,400. So I'm making less money. Well, no, not really. Not when you factor in these things. The thing is, they don't factor in these things. So you need to put it in front of them and help them realize, well, this is reality. This is the reality of the situation when you're dealing with rentals. Okay. So you would walk through this process with them to prove to them that you paying them $1,700 a month and dealing with all of this other stuff, they're still going to make more money working with you and less hassles. So you may have to revert back to that sheet where we went through with those 12 different situations to talk about renting versus rent to own and the reasons why, right? And just keep reiterating that stuff over and over as you're going through the process. So we went through that as well. So reducing the rent payment. So here is actually some scripting stuff that you can use. The homeowner, I'm going to call him Jim. So Jim, any chance you can give me a reduction in rent because of maintenance and repairs, or what, 2,000, 2,500 a year, something like that? Owner says, no way, I don't spend that much money on maintenance. Then you refer to that worksheet the repair and maintenance worksheet. Well, Jim, really, maybe we should think about this for a minute. I just want to get an idea of what this place is really going to cost me. If I'm going to take it over, what's this place going to cost me? Maybe we can get an idea what's going to cost me and look after this home. How much do you think it would cost to paint this property, Jim? Or how often do you paint it? Every 3 to 4 years. So then every year that would be, whatever. I think we use 4,000 divided by 4. That'd be, $4,000 a month. This is the message or question from Florence. So you said X dollars for mortgage, then X dollars for down. How do these costs figure in this scenario? Is this rental only model for homeowner? Florence, the worksheets we were just going through we're dealing with the homeowner. We're dealing with the homeowner here. So we're comparing with the homeowner, we're comparing if the homeowner was to just rent it out themselves and had to deal with everything themselves, how much money would it cost them versus if they just dealt with us. So this is all in negotiating with the homeowner. So we're comparing Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, oh, you just want to rent it out yourself and you're going to sell it in the future? Well, let's really take a look at that and see how much money you would actually make if you just rented it out yourself versus if you rented it to own it to us. Okay, you got it. Okay. So all of this that we're going through, this is the second component of the OPH model, which is negotiating and presenting and negotiating. So all of this is in reference to the homeowner. Everything we're talking about is in reference to the homeowner. Okay, so we need to get an idea of the cost. So how much do you think it would cost to paint this place, Jim? How often do you paint it? What would that be? How often do you have to replace the carpet in the place? That sort of thing. Maybe every 10 years, it's about $4,000 to replace it. Okay, that's about $400 a year. I talked about this a little bit, so I'll speed through this. How often do you think we have to replace the roof? Every 15 years. So how much does that cost? Maybe $8,000. So that's about $500 a year. Jim, do you clean the furnace every year like you're supposed to? How much? About $250 a year. You ever have any trades come in, Jim? Each year, electricians or plumbers, anything they have to deal with, snaking something or getting the electrical panel looked at or anything like that? Well, I do everything myself. Well, we need to compare apples to apples because, what I'm talking about is, Jim, is me doing all the work and you not doing all the work, which means that you'd have to hire somebody. But if you're going to do it all, what do you think your time is worth, Jim? Because maybe I'll get you to do it and do all the work for me. Like I said, he's not going to say zero because then they'd be working for free, right? So he's going to give you a number. So you're probably looking at what, $300 minimum, Jim? Maybe $90 an hour, 3-hour minimum charge, something like that for getting a trade in. So Jim, do you ever have to do any outside maintenance like fertilize the lawn, landscaping work, fix any boards, fix clean gutters, paint the fence outside, anything like that? How much do you think you'd spend on that, Jim? Can we say like $200 a year? What about the hot water tank? How often do you change that out? Every 10 years? Something like that. Then add up all the numbers to determine what the repairs and maintenance value will be, and to use that on that repair and maintenance form, if you recall this form here. So basically that is a script to walk the homeowner through coming up with numbers to justify the $2,000 or $2,500 a year for a single family home, or if it's a condo or whatever, you still want to go through this process because you still need to get some numbers in there for repair and maintenance. Okay. Okay, so the next thing is rent, then rent and selling versus rent to own. So here's another sheet where you're actually comparing. So the one where you're comparing rent to own, that is for somebody who just has their home up for rent, and you say, hey, you want to do a rent to own or something, you want to turn that into a rent to own. But if the homeowner is calling you specifically on your ad that says, hey, I want to rent a house for 2 to 3 years and then sell it, and they're calling specifically on that ad, and they're thinking about either doing it themselves or working with you. So they've already made the decision they're going to rent it for 2 to 3 years and then sell it. So it's basically, are they going to do it themselves with a realtor selling at the end, or are they going to work with you? So that is what this sheet is for, is to compare those two situations. The last one was just comparing, hey, if you're just going to rent it out, why not think about renting to own it instead? So you're just comparing the rental portion of that. But this is comparing, hey, you're going to rent it, then sell it in the future. Hey, why not work with us and let us rent it for 2 to 3 years and then buy it from you? So this would be very much like the exact, the last one we went through. The only difference is the top portion we can put in the selling information, okay? So estimated fair market value of the home today. What they would basically put it on the market for. How long, what they think it would be worth in 3 years. So try to get them to help them figure that out, and how much, what do you think the appreciation is going to be in 3 years? I think the, next year it's going to go down 10%, and it might go up 4% after that, and then maybe 4 or 5%. I think we're going to end up rated the exact same place in 3 years. But in reality, most of them are going to say, well, I think it's going to go up 2 or 3% next year, and maybe 2 or 3 next year. So, okay, well, 6%. Okay, we'll add 6% on, and we'll put it in there. But Jim, typically that when you sell a home, it's very rare that you get your asking price. A lot of times, on average, in most cases, on average, you're getting about 95% of your listing price. So what do you think you would take for this place, Jim? You enter in negotiations. Someone made you an offer, where would you end up? Like, what would be your bottom line on this thing? Where so he give you a number. Say, okay, whatever that number is. Let's say it's 290,000. Listed it for 300. He said, I'd take 290. Okay, 290. Hey, well, Jim, what if I came in with all cash and was going to close in less than 30 days, all cash, no conditions? Would you take 280? It's pretty much a guaranteed sale, Jim. He'd say whatever, because what you're trying to do is prove to him that 290 is not his bottom line. And he says, oh, yeah, I'd take 280. Okay, well, I guess 290 wasn't your bottom line, Jim. So you're saying that you'd actually take 280. You sure you wouldn't take a little bit less? So you're just playing through that scenario to see if the number he gave you is actually his bottom line or not. So you go through there. Then the rest of it is pretty much like the rental sheet we went through, the gross income, $2,000 a month times 24 months or 12 months. Actually, in this case, you would do it for 3 years if it's a 3-year term. So $2,000 a month times 36 months. You put in your vacancy, so subtract the 3 months or 9 months of vacancy, whatever you can get the homeowner to agree to. And then you put in all of your other figures that you budgeted, repairs and maintenance, say $2,000 a year for 3 years, that's $6,000. Property management, whether it's them doing it or they pay a property manager, or it's their time. Make sure you put in some money there for 3 years. Remember, it was when it's vacant once a year, they had to pay $100 for that month for hydro or electricity. So times that by 3, that's $300. And you go through this same process all the way through, and you do it on your part. Now, you do not put the price in that you're going to give them at the beginning. You wait till the very end. You go through all of the expenses stuff first, and you put in the rental stuff and that, and then you give them the bottom line. But you've already worked through this prior to meeting the homeowner. You've got a very good idea what numbers you're going to put in there, because at the end of the day, you need the homeowner to show more money at the bottom on the right hand side here, the net amount in your pocket. You need this number on this side to be higher than this side, so that you can prove to the homeowner that you paying him $1,700 a month and buying the place for less than he wants today, actually still makes him more money. So these sheets just help you negotiate with the homeowner to prove to them, to show them the expenses that they actually would incur. And then by working with you, you don't have all those expenses like realtors and carrying costs, getting a show ready. Because if we look down the bottom of this one on the left, we've got getting the property show ready. So that means at the end of the 3 years, the tenant once the last tenant moves out, you have to get it fixed up. So you're looking at repainting the entire place. You're looking at probably new carpets, maybe some new fixtures. You're looking at, on a single family home, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. You've got carrying costs. So it's going to be sit vacant for probably 5 months while you're fixing it up, and you've got a realtor putting it for sale. And by the time you close on it and get the actual check, that's going to be 5 months worth of payment. You got to factor that in there. You got to factor in the cost of the realtor. All of those things you factor into this sheet to drop the left side as much as possible, because remember, all of those you don't have any of those expenses on the right side. So it's much easier to show the homeowner they're going to make more money with you, but you're going to pay them less every month, and you're going to pay them less for the property at the end, because you don't have all these expenses that they would typically have. So that is the renting and selling yourself versus rent own. So this is a sheet that you would potentially take with you if you're going to meet with the homeowner, do your negotiation. You would take with you, and you would work through a sheet like this with the homeowner. Okay. So some of the questions homeowners usually have. So we got some questions, and we got some answers to the questions. Someone has a question here. What are that's just I didn't put that form in there, Ali. It's a property management form, just for calculating property management fees, to show you how to calculate property management fees. So I have a form for that. Like if you actually wanted to show the homeowner how to calculate property management fees. So I would just say, I just use 10%. I don't even go through that form, because most property managers will charge 10% of the rent. So if it's a $2,000 in rent, they're charging you $200 a month. This is a form that actually breaks down even further, like how much they would charge for screening to tenants. Like you could actually go through this whole sheet, just like the repair sheet, go through a sheet similar to that for how much they would actually charge. But I just stick to, it's easy, just say 10% of rent. Or if you're going to calculate the homeowner's time, one of the two. But that's just referring to another form, which I don't think I've ever used. So I just didn't take it off here. So back to the questions. I don't know you. Do you have any references? Well, you know, Jim, I understand that because we don't like working with people we don't know either. Basically meaning Jim, because you don't know Jim either. My main concern, Jim, and the reason why you keep saying their name is because people love the sound of their own name. My main concern, Jim, is that, as you know, bad news travels a lot faster than good news, right? As you're nodding your head, yes, while you say this. And I wouldn't want you saying anything bad about our company. You know, we have an excellent reputation right now, and we wouldn't want that being messed up by anything bad. Jim, the bottom line is we don't give out references from our clients we work with because, Jim, we would never bother you for any references. But what I could do, Jim, is if you really wanted us to give you some properties we currently have under management, you could do a drive-by and just take a look at them. Or I can give you some references and referrals from some of our satisfied clients, if that would help you, meaning basically you're just going to give them a piece of paper with a testimonial on it. Is that something you'd like? Basically, you're not giving names or numbers or anything like that. It's just written testimonials. So this is, if you actually, this is your very first deal. You did this. So this is your answer if this is your first deal. Hey, you're so lucky, Jim. You're my very first client. I'm going to remember you forever. But I am working with this guy who's been doing this thing since like 2009. He's written a couple books on how to do this thing properly. So basically you're making reference that this is your first deal, but you're working with somebody like me who's done this for a long time, written some books on it, knows what they're doing as a business. So basically you're building authority through somebody else. But don't lie to them and say you're doing this all the time. This is your first deal. Say, hey, Jim, you're lucky. This is my very first deal. But the good news is that I'm working with somebody who's been doing this for a long time. You know, they've worked with a ton of people, written a couple of books on the topic on how to do this properly, educates people on homeowners on how to do this right, other investors. So, yeah. You just say something like that, borrow other people's credibility. Another question. Hey, well, this sounds pretty good, John, but I need to run this by my lawyer. Well, Jim, absolutely. I would expect you to that you want to do that. And you know what? It's been through about 1,000 lawyers before, so one more is not really going to hurt. So this gives you social proof that, you know, you're not objecting to him going to a lawyer. You're giving him social proof that, hey, these contracts have been in front of thousands of lawyers before. And one more is not going to hurt. So saying something like that, they're less apt to actually go to a lawyer. Not that you care if they go to a lawyer. You don't care. But in the homeowner's mind, it's going to say social proof that, oh, this has already been looked over by 1,000 lawyers. Like, why am I going to bother wasting my money taking it to a lawyer? Those read it themselves. But you're never saying that don't take it to a lawyer. You're just saying, hey, you know, it's been through 1,000 lawyers before. One more is not going to hurt. So, but I advise all my clients, hey, you know, you need to seek independent legal advice. If you just read through this yourself, you're going to sign a document and say that I told you to seek independent legal advice. Now, I think you'll find, Jim, that these contracts are pretty straightforward. So how do I get paid my monthly rent? How do you want to get paid, Jim? You know, we had a couple options. We could send you some post-dated checks. We could have you have the check couriered to you monthly, or what most people prefer is EFT, electronic funds transfer. Is that what you'd prefer? Remember using that word most, because everybody wants to be like most people, what most people prefer. So whatever you do most, whatever you want the homeowner to do, is say that's what most people do. Like most people, you know, do EFT. How can you guarantee that in 3 years from now you're going to buy my home? Well, you know, Jim, it's true. We do have an option to buy your home. Excuse me. And there's the possibility that the people we put in the home don't buy it, but we carefully screen them. So usually, we usually don't put people in the home that don't really want to buy it. So most of our people that we put in homes buy them. But even if the situation where the people in the homes don't buy it, Jim, it's in our interest to find a buyer for your home. And the reason is, Jim, we make our money by structuring these deals, managing the properties, and selling the homes. Just like I told you, Jim, like that management fee, we don't get paid that fee unless the home is sold. And Jim, if we don't find a buyer for this property, we don't get paid. And I don't like working 3 years for free. Because you see, Jim, unlike a lot of management companies that take a paycheck every single month, we only take a paycheck at the end if and only if we buy or sell the property, which pretty much means if I don't buy or sell this property, I'm not going to get paid. And I don't think you'd want to work for 3 years without getting paid. Would you, Jim? Neither do I. So you can bet we're going to do our best to get this place sold. Well, Jim, let's just say for some unusual reason that I don't buy or sell the property. How would you have benefited? Well, wouldn't you agree with me that you haven't had any management issues to worry about? You know, we looked after all of those for you. And wouldn't you agree that you hadn't had any vacancies to worry about? And you haven't had to spend any money on repairs of the property? And you get your principal paid down on your mortgage for the 3 years? And as a side bonus, you're still legally the owner, so you get all the tax benefits of being the owner, even though you're not acting like one. So worst case scenario, you would have benefited from me looking after your property all this time, and the only person who's going to lose out in this whole deal is me. Well, couldn't I just do this myself, John? Well, yeah, of course you could, Jim. And we'll help you if you want us to. But wouldn't you agree with me? You're right back in the same situation you are right now with all the landlording, the late night calls, the vacancies, the repairs, and all that stuff you're talking about that you wanted to get rid of. Never mind the loss of money and the loss of income. You know, most people figure it out that working with me is way better than working on their own. Well, I was just thinking about selling your house right now, so why should I work with you? Well, there's a few reasons here, Jim. First of all, we're offering to pay you more than you'd make if you did this on your own. Second, since we take care of all the maintenance and repairs, you'll have none of that. Third, you're going to have no vacancies. Fourth, you have a steady positive cash flow. Fifth, we pay all the costs such as advertising, pre-screening, credit checks. Sixth, you won't have to get it show ready. Seventh, you'll not have any of the real estate costs. Eighth, you won't have any of the holding costs. Ninth, you won't have any possible early mortgage penalties. So how long before you buy my home? Well, there's several things we need to consider here, Jim. One of them would be, well, most importantly, when do you want to sell your home? I mean, you're actually in control of the property, Jim. So the most important thing is I have to worry about is you. So you control the deal here. I also have to think about my tenant buyer and when they're going to be able to qualify for a traditional mortgage. From my experience, I know that 90% of my clients need 2 to 3 years before they qualify for a traditional bank mortgage. So we usually set a 3-year term. What I'm trying to do, Jim, is create a win-win situation between you and my tenant with you in control. Because ultimately, you're the one that's in control in that of that decision. So let me ask, when does your mortgage term come due? Because in today's world, there's a lot of mortgage payout penalties, even some interest differential penalties, which can be extremely high. So that is, I guess that's the end of the scripting. So hopefully, hopefully those little examples add some value to your negotiating. And between that, God, how far do I go back? So yeah, so hopefully between that and the handouts, um, working through the information will help you in getting better at negotiating with the homeowners, presenting the information. Again, the objective always is to get the home below today's fair market rent and below fair market value for the property. Okay. So, like in the yesterday's example with Malik, we had 1,900 and 250,000. So after going through this negotiation process, we could potentially get the property down to 17 or 1,600 rent, and potentially in the 230s for the purchase price, and the homeowner would still make more money. We could prove to the homeowner they would make more money working with us at that price than they would if they just did it themselves. And by putting it in at that price, that $30,000 deal would pretty much, you can be pretty much assured that it's up to $50,000 to $60,000 by getting it down to $1,600, $1,700 in rent, and say $230,000 to $235,000 for a purchase price. You can pretty much be assured that you're going to be making close to $50,000 to $60,000 in that particular deal. Okay, let's just run. Let me just pull that up and find that spreadsheet again. Oh, I didn't keep it. All right. So I'm just going to go back to that example I was working with Malik yesterday. So it was a 36-month. The person was coming in with 9,000. The homeowner wanted 1,900. I believe we were getting asked them to pay 2,100. This was 250. This number was 273. $200. So this is just, I'm just, right now I'm just putting in the information from the example we went through yesterday. There we go. So this was the example yesterday that we worked through with Malik. Okay, so this was pre-negotiation. So after we just learned all that negotiating stuff, we say, okay, well, our objective, when we meet the homeowner, we know we want to do our best to get this down. Say we can get it to 1,700, and let's see if we can get this to 235. What does that do for our deal? So you can see through a negotiation, if you can get that homeowner to go from 19 to 17, and it's going to be easy enough to prove that at $1,700 they're still further ahead in the rent situation because of all of the expenses they're not going to have to deal with, such as vacancies and all the bills that come along with vacancies and the repairs and maintenance. So it's going to be easy to justify to get down to 1,700. And then through negotiations for the purchase of the property, not having all those big expenses like dealing with the getting it show ready at the end, like the 5 months of vacancies, all of that, the realtor fees, you should be able to get the property at a lower price and the homeowner is still making more money. So if we shoot for the objective, okay, we want a $50,000 deal. So let's shoot for getting at least 1,700. We'll go for 16, but if we can get 1,700, we'll shoot for 230. But if we can get 235, these are the numbers. So even if the homeowner was being difficult and you got it for 240, whoops, 240, you still had a $47,000 deal. So just giving you an idea. So even if you couldn't get the owner to budge much, just that $100 a month and the $10,000 off the purchase price, that's putting a little bit more than $10,000 in your pocket. So that $30,000 deal is up to 43, but really shoot for 1,700 and 235. So this is what I do. Like before I meet with any homeowner, I'm running all these different scenarios. And I'm going through the spreadsheets. I'll actually show you the sheet that I use. Oh, guess I wasn't supposed to do that. Just give me a sec. I'll pull up the worksheet that I actually created for myself, and going in through a process to this. I'm on version. It's probably my 5th version, but I'm going to be redoing it again because just for presentation purposes, I want to present stuff a little bit differently. Just that, so I operate mine a little bit different. Florence, that is a question for your accountant. I can tell you one thing I know, but I am not an accountant, so none of this information you should take as gospel. I am not an accountant. I am not a lawyer. But when it comes to doing options, the option money is not taxable until the event occurs. So either the event is the homeowner or the tenant buyer either executes and purchases the property. At that point in time, the option money becomes taxable, or the person defaults on the option, does not buy the home, they default, and then at that point in time, the option money is taxable. But from my understanding, again, I am not an accountant. Do not take anything I say as gospel. I don't know a single thing about accounting, just say that. But as far as I know, the option money gets deferred, it's tax deferred until the event actually takes place. So, but that's a question for your accountant. So when the homeowner, sorry, I'm just want to quickly show you a couple things here. So, okay. So once the homeowner goes through my automated system and they fill in the survey, so you can see the information. I've hidden all the information, the privacy information. So you can see this person gives me the details about their property, the appliances, the basement, how many baths, bedrooms, how much they spend on electricity a month, what the flooring's made of, what they consider fair market value, and just details about the property, as well as this person put $1. This is a bad example because they have no mortgage on the place. So just let me cancel out of this one. This person has a mortgage. So you can tell, you can see that the 2.49 interest, $330,000 mortgage, balance, information. And the reason I'm showing you all of this information is for the next, this is my personal thing. So I just transposed some of that information into, this is my little input table, which is kind of messy, but I just put the financial information in here because this feeds this particular owner's choice analysis spreadsheet, and it does a lot of calculations. But this is just way too, like this, there's a lot of information in here, but there's way too much, more than I actually need to visualize, to see. So I started making different tables. So I just wanted to see different situations, scenarios. So you can see here if the homeowner were to rent it for 3 years and then sell it themselves with a realtor, you can see their gross rent would be $2,100. Fair market value $4,700. So the money in their pocket after the mortgage is paid out would be $46,000. And I offer actually 3 different programs. A guaranteed one, that's where I guarantee the rent. One where I don't guarantee the rent for the whole thing, and another one where I just help them do it. So you can see here, just when we're talking about the expenses, we're talking about the expenses, the selling expenses. So you can see on the second column here, see if you can follow my cursor, but just their selling expenses. This would be the realtor fees along with the vacancies and all of that. For this situation, they're looking at $35,000 in expenses after the tenant moves out and it's time to sell, totaling all the expenses, the carrying the mortgage for 5 months. I think I budgeted $5,000 for fixing the place up, and the realtor fees, selling the property. They would be looking at $35,000 in expenses compared to, depending upon my option, what my expenses are. So even though I'm making them an offer that's less than what they would gross get, their net is much less. I also mentioned that I was going to show you the model for being a private lender. So I created this sheet. All of this stuff just happens once I plug that information in the first sheet, like my little input sheet. All of this just automatically gets calculated. So I want to determine, okay, does this home qualify for me to give the homeowner any money? And if so, if we go back to renting, you can see that if the fair market rent for this house is $2,100, we add for vacancy allowance of $175, but their actual costs to run this house are $2,674 per month. So they have a negative cash flow of $749 per month, or over 36 months, their negative cash flow is almost $27,000. They'd have to shell out like $750 every month for this. So you're thinking to yourself, well, God, I'm like, why would a homeowner even want to rent this place? Like, their expenses are so high, and $2,100 is fair market rent. It's not like they can ask $2,700. They can't. At the same time, if they sell their home, after they pay out the mortgage, they're only going to put maybe $11,000 in their pocket. So if they purchased it with 5% down, this is a larger home, $475,000. So plus I do know that they just sunk $40,000 into fixing the place up because they had a bad tenant. So now they're into this place for 80 grand cash. And if they sell it, they're only going to walk away with 10,000 or 11,000 out of the 80. So they're losing like $70,000. So there's like no way we like lose all that money. And then you look at renting. Well, there's renting, like they're going to have to shell out $750 a month renting. They work with me. Like if I help them, where they get to 2,100 and they don't have all those other expenses that they normally have, then they're only going to lose like $338 a month. So by me helping them with the rent to own, instead of doing the full guaranteed service, I just help them set it up and structure it, manage the paperwork. Then they're shelling out a lot less, but it's still a lot of money that they have to shell out, $12,000 over 3 years. So I said, well, okay, maybe there's a way that I can help alleviate that pain. So I said, well, I'm going to figure out a model for borrowing against the property. If they can't go to the bank and refinance it, which most banks aren't going to refinance nowadays, and especially if they have more than 85% loan to value. So I figured out, okay, based on their current loan, based on the current information they provided me, I want to make sure that even if the market goes down some, I'm still going to be still protecting the second mortgage holder information, and say how much could I, in my own little model, how much could I lend them? So you can see in this situation, based on, so we were looking at option 3. Based on option 3, they could borrow up to, I would find a private lender that's willing to lend them $32,877. Okay, but if I found a private lender willing to do that, and let's say it's at 6% or whatever it is, they sign a mortgage document and they get registered against the title, and they get the $32,877, there would be an agreement in there where $12,180 of that dollars comes to me, because remember, that's the shortfall on their cash flow every single month. Every single month there's a shortfall in cash flow, $338, for a total of $12,180. So if I find the private lender, I'm going to have it built in where $12,180 actually comes to me, and I hold it in reserve for them, so that every single month I'm paying them the $2,100, but I also bump up their payment every single month with an extra payment of $338. So I'm providing them the full $2,438 to cover their expenses. But the $338 of that comes from the money that they borrowed against their own home. So this is just a strategy that I came up with, is that, hey, I can find private lenders or people with RRS. In Canada, it's RSPs. In the US, it would be 401ks that'll turn them into mortgages for these people's property. And I can get some of that mortgage money and I can hold it and just pay it out on a monthly basis to top up their rent, to make sure that they're not a negative cash flow, just to make sure that they're a break even every single month. Then that's a much more attractive option to the homeowner to know, hey, well, I can he can get me some money. I can borrow against my property, and I don't have to worry about coming up with that $300 or whichever option, the $750 a month every single month or whatever it was, to cover my expenses. So not only is he helping me by selling the home for more, getting me more money, but he's also finding me a private lender that's going to get me some cash now and help cover the monthly cash flow deficit every single month. So I don't have to worry every single month about coming up with extra cash to cover the payment. Now, some people might say, well, John, why don't you just give them the whole $32,877? That way they don't have to worry about they'll have the cash, because knowing human behavior, they would spend the whole 32,877, and then they would still have an issue of coming up with the 330 some dollars every single month. So it's like, I'm just protecting myself and the situation and the homeowner. Say, hey, I'm going to hold this money back, and I will pay it out back to you every single month to make sure that you're getting enough money to cover all of the necessary bills. Okay. So this is I built this from the actual the model that I have in the course, my digital course, and that I actually took it and I expanded on it. And this is my own private version, which I'm going to actually redo again, because I use this information when I present information to my homeowners for this, showing them how much money they would make based on working with me. Okay. But I have to pare it down even further. I want to show them less information. I just got to focus in on one thing. So that's what I discovered. Having the 3 options is great. However, it's 2 options too many. When I present it to them, it just confuses them. So the way that I showed you initially, where you're just walking through and you're just making the one offer of, hey, I'll rent it for this much, and here's my purchase price number, and you're just giving them that one offer, and you're negotiating on that one offer, works way better than what I created here. So I'm going to pare down what I created here to just be, I'm still going to have the 3 offers, but I'm not going to present them the 3 offers. I'm going to ask them more leading questions in the survey to find out what's more important to them, having that guarantee or making more money or not being involved versus just a bunch of different questions, so I can zero in on what it is, what their the biggest desire for them is, and what they are trying to avoid, so I can see which option would work best for them, and just present that one option to them. Is the money held in trust? No money is held in trust. None of this money has to be held in trust. You just hold it in a bank account. Obviously, with appropriate tracking, you would hold it with appropriate tracking, but there's no need to, in Canada, there's no need to hold any of the option money in trust whatsoever. And I don't believe in any of the other countries you have to hold any of the option money in trust, because it essentially just becomes a paper trail that you provide documentation, proof to the lenders and the lawyers at the end that they've paid this much money, and you can corroborate that by either copies of bank statements, your bank statement, their bank statement, a spreadsheet showing all of the money that has been accumulated, but you just document all the proof of the money changing hands over the 3 years or whatever it is. So none of this money has to be held in trust. But seek your own independent legal advice and advice of an accountant. All right, so that is, we'll go back to the keynote. Here we go. All right, setup and structure. We're just rolling through today. Okay, so can we just take is it okay if we just take like a 5-10 minute break? I just want to, just a quick, run from my too much beverages this morning. And I'm going to maybe grab a couple carrots just to munch on before, just to settle my stomach down. And then, so yeah, say 5-10 minutes maximum. So what is it now? It's 16 after the hour where I am. So say around 25 after the hour. So what's that, 9 minutes or so? So I will be back in about 9 minutes. All right, I'm back. All right.